All right, YouTube says we're live. I couple different conversations this afternoon that I thought warranted some was worthy actually of conversation tonight on the live feed, and I don't know where that I don't know whose picture that was. We're discussing understanding the business. But I thought that sort of was a good caption. It was a kind of a good caption for the business when we talk about understanding trucking, because there's so many different facets that kind of go into this. And while we're waiting for a few people to jump in, I'm gonna jump over to my site really quick so I can answer some of the questions. So bear with me. I just clicked on the wrong thing. All right. So as we talk about, somebody asked today, they said, Gary, man, I was just talking about this a few moments ago. I was looking at the weather map, and that looks like a real deal storm, no doubt. And it looked like the lake effect of snow was in play for kind of the eastern side of the Great Lakes. I think they were talking like close to a foot. So it looked pretty serious. It looks like there was a pretty hardcore blizzard and some high wind warnings and all that sort of stuff going on as well. So it looked pretty hardcore. It looked really hardcore up in the upper Midwest and the Great Lakes area for sure. Really quickly, while people are just jumping in, my mom is in here, and Mom, I want you to know that last night Joe Harding was saying a lot of bad things. Not a lot of bad things. He didn't care for your curtains, and I want to know what you thought about that.
Joe Harding, don't badmouth my curtains. I'll come and wear you out.
Joe Harding, did you hear that? She said, don't badmouth her curtains or she will come and wear you out. And I told you that exact thing last night. I told you can come and you can choose the hand, you can choose a belt, you can choose the wire under the fly swatter, you can choose any of those.
Broomstick?
Broomstick, yeah. I've got a lot of things that have been used on my rear end over the years. So just want Joe Harding to know that. I want to talk about this really quick. Trucking dream or nightmare. That was kind of the question that was posed to me this afternoon by someone. And it was really interesting because they didn't just pose the question. What had happened actually was that was the answer to the data that they had brought to me. And I thought I'd maybe go over that with you guys as well, and kind of see how that plays out. A couple of things that have kind of been thrown around my way, and this I'll just kind of lead with this because this will be kind of short and sweet. Another question that had been sent in to me on email was, what was my opinion on the kind of the pros and cons of dispatching services? Obviously, I don't use one. We don't use one. But I thought that was kind of an interesting question, so I'll throw that out to you guys. I guess right off the top of my head, the pros would be, or the cons would be, obviously, the fact that you are having to pay someone else for that. As I've kind of been around the space, it seems like that pricing is somewhere between like 8 and 12%, probably 10% is about an average. That seems like a pretty steep amount. I would hope that you're getting a really stable rate for that. So that's the con, right? Right off the top is you're giving up a pretty noticeable percentage of your revenue. What do you get for that? Well, hopefully they have a very streamlined back office, paperwork kind of process that takes a lot of that out of your hands, allows you to kind of focus on just the task of driving. I think you would also hope that they're doing a better job, considering they're looking at the boards and contacting brokers that they have relationships as well as some potential direct customers with. So you hope that your rates are better as a result of that, thus warranting the increase in rates. I was looking at some data on comparing some of our rates to kind of the spot market average on DAT, and I wrote it down. I think we were 39 cents ahead of the spot market over the past 30 days for what we've been running and the areas that we've been running. So that just comes with, someone looking at trying to find the right runs, the right spots. I always get nervous anytime you put, somebody else in charge of your revenue or your livelihood. So that's a concern for me. I think the other concern would be, as I've mentioned in the last couple of videos, is what rate am I paying? Like, so obviously you want to go and you want to negotiate a better rate. Let's assume that you do negotiate 8%. Let's assume that you negotiate 7% from that dispatch service. You're negotiating a better rate, but are you also cutting your nose off to spite your face? Because if somebody else is paying them 10%, who are they more apt to find loads for, you or them? So it's an interesting game. The more I think about it, we've not used one. For those of you guys that have used it, I'd be curious to know what your thoughts are on that. As relates to, is trucking a dream or a nightmare? Let me try to pull up this information. Here's kind of how someone had described it to me. They said, hey, look, listen to the last few videos, and kind of concerned as I look at making that jump into possibly to becoming a lease op. They said, if I sort of take a look at some averages, and this could be a little tough for you guys as I'm just going to kind of rattle this off, but if we make the assumption of 100,000 miles driven, just for a big round number because it makes it easy, you want a $60,000 a year salary, so that's going to equate to about 60 cents a mile. Your fuel will be roughly 40 cents a mile. Maintenance, they have sketched out at 15 cents, insurance at 18 cents. Tractor, 24 cents out of your cost per mile. That's they assumed $2,800, a little north of $2,800 for the 5-year lease. I think they also mentioned, I think that I can't recall. 18 cents for the trailer. That equates to $1.75 a mile. Now, there's a couple things that I would just throw in there. I think fuel is probably right on. Salary, I think most guys are probably looking for more than 60 grand. I think the maintenance is a little shy. As I mentioned that last night, as I looked at some of the other individuals, some of you guys that have sent me your P&L over the past year or so, as I kind of glanced back through those the other night, most individuals were sort of carving out 10 to 12 cents a mile, but in reality, their real P&L at the end of the year was in the 20s. That's a pretty big delta. We're talking, I mean, again, assume that you're that individual that's just carving out 10 cents a mile. If you're spending 22 cents a mile on 100,000 miles, that's well north of $10,000 delta that you're paying but not saving, if that makes sense. Let me put that message away. So I think the maintenance is a little bit light. I think the insurance is could be debated as well, right? That represents about $18,000 in spend for insurance annually. Most of the people that I hear about their insurance, or most of the stuff that I see on the internet, and if it's on the internet, it has to be true, right? Is somewhere sort of in the low to mid 20s. So at 18,000, that would seem to be noticeably low than the average that I see. Tractor, again, that's sort of all over the board. You can kind of go anywhere for that argument. But net is, we're also missing things like tolls. We're missing things like washouts and a few other things. And so their comment, and again, this was for dry van. Their comment was, at $1.75 a mile, what's the real revenue per mile after someone's P&L rolls out for the entire year? Because they felt like, that was a pretty conservative. $1.75 was sort of conservative, and I would agree. I think the argument can be made that maintenance needs to be higher, that insurance is possibly higher, and so that leaves you at $1.75. Again, a lot of guys would like to make more than 60 grand. So they said, man, if that is the case, if this is sort of a best case scenario, what's a realistic number of kind of revenue per mile? And as I look back at a couple different P&Ls, I didn't have many that were dry van, but there were a couple, and they were around $1.80. Okay, so that's not a lot of extra as far as income that's left over after you taking that $60,000 in salary. The other thing I think we need to capture as well is in that number is you've got some deadhead miles in there, right? It's not like every mile that you're going to run is going to be profitable. So you got to factor in, you guys tell me. I mean, we sort of try to trend around 7% deadhead. And quite frankly, I think some guys are maybe a little bit higher than that. Those guys that are kind of content with running less miles but chasing a higher rate, that deadhead's going to be higher. So when you look at that, your cost is probably for that dry van and that operation at $1.75. There's just not a lot of extra revenue there. And their question was this: for all these companies that are selling that kind of that lease op, is it a dream or is it just a nightmare? And I think the lure, right, as we talked about it, the lure is of that truck ownership and sort of being your own boss and dispatching yourself. By the way, there's no cost in that number for dispatch fees, right? And some of those other types of fees. There's no permitting. There's no. We're missing a fair amount of other small things that add up to 5-6 cents. So, interesting question, and again, it's an interesting carrot, right? I think a lot of people in the industry sort of dangle that carrot, and I think that's why I think that's why we see a lot of individuals struggling to make it, right? I mean, low risk, low reward. Boy, I mean, again, if you're looking at yeah, it could be low risk, right? Let's be honest. I mean, a lot of these companies aren't. I mean, what do they charge? $2,500. Some guys are around $5,000, right, to put down for the truck. They'll take your maintenance fees and all that sort of stuff. They'll sort of call it different things, right? Relocation fee and cleaning fee and whatever they may call it. But depending on how long you run, you could be losing a decent amount of money. I guess the trade-off is you're making a paycheck, but to me, I guess it depends on the company role that you could have and what that would pay. So I guess that's the argument, right? Is it in fact low risk for low reward? I don't know really where it stands. I think it's going to be different for everybody depending on everybody's circumstance, right? So, man, I don't know. I just think it's interesting, and I think I will say this again, because I say it in most videos. It's a challenging place to be in. Now, out of that conversation, that led to sort of just another conversation, and I'm curious how you guys feel about this. Now, these are just sort of this is sort of big round. I mean, this is literally back of the napkin numbers. I sort of jotted down. If we look at this industry, and I'm dry van. That's kind of the space that I know. We don't know much about flatbed or step decking, oversized, any of that other stuff. But if I just sort of rattle off, how many weeks of the year would we consider fall into that category of good rates, right? And so you don't have to agree with this. This is just sort of what I wrote down. This is kind of what I'm working off of. First 2 weeks of January, in my experience, the last several years have been really good, really good. Those last 2 weeks of January, sketchy, right? Sketchy to bad. February is usually pretty poor. A couple weeks into March, I think you're typically pretty poor as well. If I look at May, is typically they're trending up, right? A couple weeks, the last 2 weeks of April are trending up. May is typically trending up. June is usually good. The first 2 weeks of July are good. Once we get to the last 2 weeks of July, those are typically pretty bad. August, September, October, typically not particularly good. November, half and half. December is usually on the plus side to maybe good, right? Depending on the last couple weeks. If you sort of take those weeks, ironically, again, I just sort of one effort, one rough draft, that comes out to 22 weeks of good, 22 weeks of bad, and the rest just sort of like sketchy, right? Here's the thing. I think here's the challenge, at least that I see. Of those weeks, of those 22 weeks that are good, if we sort of look at last year, right, almost everywhere was good. I mean, you could go from, you could go from the southeast to the northeast. You could go anywhere and you were going to be turning a profit on almost any load that you took. So if you look at that analogy but here's the thing, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at. if last year was a bit of an anomaly, which I think most of us would agree it certainly was, you look at the rest of the past several years, or maybe what this year looks like, or what we're facing now, what we tend to see is we're gonna get a really good rate going into a bad area, right? Because we know that we're gonna get, the kind of the reverse is gonna hold true. And so what most guys sort of say is, well, look, I'm gonna get bad, we'll use Florida as the example. I'm gonna get a really good rate going into Florida because I know I'm gonna get a crappy one coming out. And during those, even those good times, those good 22 weeks, we sort of tend to face a lot of that. Here's the problem with that is if data is old or data is stale or we make a bad decision or we screw up or the truck breaks down or we get sick and things change, while we're going to or are in that market, all of a sudden we have a pretty, a higher chance of making a mistake out of those 22 good weeks. So I guess what I'm trying to say simply is those 22 weeks, to capture 22 full good weeks of running, we need not to make any big mistakes, right? We've got to make quality business decisions on the loads that we're taking to the locations that we're taking. And I think that's why having a lot of this data is really important. I think having a better understanding of the industry is important. If you run reefer, you need to know, you need to be familiar with the USDA website, right? You need to know when potatoes run out of where, when apples, when peppers come up, when tomatoes come up out of Mexico. You need to be familiar with that, right? That's your business. And then you need to determine, do I want to run in some of those areas, right? Because look, when you run Northwest out of some of the apples and onions and potatoes, there's a lot of bad weather that comes with that. When you run produce that's coming up out of the border, I'm gonna tell you right now, if you're not familiar with that, you can end up waiting an entire day because for that truck to come up across the border. And so, there's perils that come with that. Again, getting back to, you can make all the right decisions, control impact negatively and begin to erode those 22 weeks of good weeks running. And so I don't know what the number really plays out to be after all is said and done. Is it 15 weeks that you ended up running with good rates? Is it 20 weeks? Maybe it's more than 22. I don't know. Again, that was just literally back of the napkin kind of stuff. I just think when you start to look at this business and you break it down into numbers on a napkin, you begin to understand and see this business a little bit differently. And that's why I think this business is tough. There's not a lot of margin, right? As I just sort of ramble through some of those numbers for dry van. Again, dry van is going to be your cheapest cost to entry, right? For those of you guys that are running, flatbed or step deck, you guys got tarps and chains and all kinds of dunnage and permitting and what have you, reefers. Gosh, if you go buy a new reefer right now, if you buy the best Thermo King, what are you going to pay, 65 grand for that? So I don't know. I just think it's an interesting conversation. I think it's a good question. Is it really truly a dream? Because I know there's plenty of guys that make it out there, right? I don't know what kind of salary you guys are making, and I don't know what your personal expenses are, nor do I need to know. What I care about really is that guys are making it that are happy and that they're successful. And what we all know is that no one is probably successful week in and week out in this business, right? There's some pretty significant swings up and down. And the guys are able to withstand those swings and make and understand the industry and then use that knowledge to sustain the swings, or the guys that are going to come out on top. So, like I said, I thought it was an interesting question. I think from the nightmare perspective, the walkaway leases, maybe there's not a lot of skin off the, kind of off the driver's back. Again, the companies win in that situation, right? Every time someone bails out of that truck, that's more profit to them. So I don't know. Gary, how is, you're headed to what, Rapid City, I think you said, right? So hopefully that's going well. Not much though, just the wind. Yeah, I saw there was a big yellow band of pretty high wind across, I think, South Dakota in that area. Samuel, Derek, how's it going? John says it's only nightmare if you let it be. It's probably true. Yeah, Spectre, it looked like it was about to be really, really hardcore up there the next day or so. Little Viking, how's it going, Bearden? Thomas, you're down in South Carolina. That's good. Rates aren't particularly good, but the weather doesn't look too bad down there. Let's see, the other day you said Rapid City was a hot market. Today I get an email from a broker about 50 loads out of there. Amazing. Again, right, we're just trying to look at that data here. I think I can bring this topic up. Some phone calls were received from DAT, and there was a concern about the accuracy of the statements that were made on maybe a couple of videos or what have you. And so I think for clarity, I'll mention this. So I think the phrase that was used was, a lot of this data is 15-day-old data, and I think I probably chose the phrase stale and that sort of thing, which I think that it is. For clarity, the data that is oftentimes seen is not 15 days old. What you see is an average of the past 15 days, which to me is still stale. I understand the argument. I understand the desire to have that point clarified. So, point clarified. In my opinion, the data is still stale relative to what is available. The point was made, ironically, today. The point was made that some of their services offer rate information that is as current as yesterday, but when challenged on that, the person admitted that. Okay, see, bye. The person admitted that, well, in today's case, it's actually Friday's data. It's the last business day. Okay, well, trucks move a lot. Friday nights, Saturdays, Sundays, and relocate over to Sundays. So, again, interesting time to make that comment. But nevertheless, there you go. It's not just 15-day-old data. It's an average of the past 15 days. Again, my opinion, I think probably another's opinion, that's still considered stale. So, Jason, how's it going? Greg says lease purchase with their authority or lease on to someone else. Insurance is good for own authority, but let's see, but leased on should only paying for a truck. No, sure, right? So I think this was clearly. I mean, if you're looking at those that are, if you're paying insurance, right, you're gonna have your own authority, right? And I guess the other question is you're gonna be paying for it one way or the other, right, Greg? I mean, if I have my own authority, I'll pay for it. If I'm leasing on to you, right, it's gonna come out of my pocket somewhere or another. Neo, how's it going? See, Jason says getting 100% authority of $1.75 is one thing, but getting 80% of that $1.75 sucks. It's $1.40 to the truck. That driver then pays the trailer expenses, etc. It's going to be tough on the 80 to 85% guys. Yeah, right. And Jason, what's funny is we weren't even having that conversation, right? We weren't even talking about giving up a percentage if you're leased on. Right, we were just sort of looking at this of, just straight up 100% of that's coming right to that individual. Next Gen said, "What's up, Scott?" You tell Next Gen I said hello. I had iced tea with him or coffee or Dr. Pepper or something down in Phoenix a few months ago. It was good to meet him. He's got a nice truck too. Wayne says that it seems like most people expect to become an owner-op with no money saved. The other business requires you to have money and credit to start. Good point. Like I said, that's kind of my contention. Is I really think to be best positioned, you kind of need around that 15 or 20 grand to be safe. Alex, how's it going? Can I match Walmart pay? Well, we can. We have some drivers that have done better than what they're advertising for. And we have some that do less than that, but as a whole across the board, no, I don't think we can average 90 grand. Nor could we probably. I don't know what their benefits are like. I'm going to assume that they're really strong benefits. No, we can't match that. Red needs to hit up Next Gen live feeds. I haven't seen one of his live feeds in a long time. 30 weeks good. Greg says about 30 weeks good, 10 weeks fair, 15 weeks low. That's good. So that's what, 30, 25? Greg, just, I know your numbers guy, but that's 55 weeks. Let's leave that right there for you, but I know what you meant. QAL says, are they still sell records amount of trucks and trailers, and are the record numbers of trucking jobs as well? So I don't know if there's a record number of trucking jobs. I think what we often hear in the States at least is that there's a driver shortage. I think there's a driver shortage. I think the job is tough, away from family, friends, kids, anniversaries, birthdays, ball games, right? Those types of things. I don't think the pay is particularly strong. I think it's lagging way behind. I think technology is lagging way behind our industry. I think technology oftentimes creates a lot of efficiencies that's good for industries. It's just a tough job, and you guys are living in. I mean, look, when I used to travel, I did it on an airplane, and oftentimes I would argue that having to deal with airports and people and that sort of stuff is way worse than being in a truck. Having said that, I had dinner wherever I wanted on expense accounts. I had a nice bed, hotel, all that sort of stuff. So, the job is just rough, right? And I can see why, why it's rough. What else is interesting is I received a lot of emails over the last couple of days from a lot of you regarding the desire to have that type of a software solution from Sonar at a reasonable cost, and there was a handful of you guys that had emailed, and you sort of said something like, I won't go through the entire email, but you sort of made this comment, and it was, man, I love this job. I love what we do, sadly or unfortunately. It's like, you love it, but man, it just, you don't get the money, you don't get the home time, just all that sort of stuff. There was a level of frustration and disappointment, but man, this is what you love to do. It's just sort of in your blood. And there's a lot of that, right? There's a lot of that. So, Barefoot says, lately I've been offered bad rates going into bad areas. Yeah. Barefoot, I think you're lucky because there's been a lot of people that have been offered bad rates going into good areas too. So, hey, SoCal, how's it going, man? Mr. East says, I'm new to your channel. Can you catch me up to date about who you are, etc.? Yeah, I am. Let me tell you what I'm not. I'm not a driver. Never drove a truck. I have drove trucks and stuff around our yard. I've actually backed into a building a time or two and blamed it on somebody else. We have a company. We own some greenhouses in the Midwest, and we are a small carrier as well. And it's really the whole purpose of the channel, Mr. East, is really just to try to provide some, hopefully more facts than opinion, the driver or a lease operator or an owner operator, and to some degree even a company driver, I guess, as well. So that's sort of the whole point of it. Bob, how's it going? Wayne says the same way trips balance with a good and bad leg, weeks should be treated the same way. That's probably true. Quick Williams deleted his comment. Can you stop erasing your videos, please? Thanks. So here's what happened last night. That's what you're talking about. Last night, the video went insanely long, and then YouTube app just crashed. And so I just normally when it crashes, you can just reconnect. That didn't happen. I just started another one, and that one went actually for quite a while as well. I didn't delete that one. I did delete it from you guys. It's just saved as private. I can repost that if you want. Big Face, what's going on, man? How are you? It's good to see you in here, man. Walmart's a good company for a driver. Look, I've heard a lot. Look, I'll tell you what I've heard about Walmart over the years. I've heard a lot of really good things about it. In fact, I don't know if Jason's still here. I think Jason's brother drove for Walmart, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, if you're still here. I've heard a lot of great things. I've just heard it's really, really difficult to get on. So I don't know if that's literally all I know about those guys and their driving. Hensley, how's it going? Rates are slow to rise and fast to fall. Man, isn't that the truth? And when you look at, I think it's interesting, the same sort of holds true with the fuel surcharges. They're really quick to fall and they are slow to rise when fuel is creeping up. And that has a significant impact. Again, as we talked about, in these other examples, I mean, fuel will almost always be your largest expense, aside from your salary. And even then, right, it could still be your largest expense. Mark, man, Fargo, you guys are like in the heart of it up there. As far as they said, blizzard, literally right where where you're at. And it looked really bad over where Spectre's at on the other side of Buffalo, like hardcore. So if you guys are up in that around that Mid-Atlantic area, or the Great Lakes area, excuse me, find a really good place to park. Be really close to the fuel island and the bathroom and the food. Let's see. You think RVT fell? Well, hopefully. Oh, that's not good. What happened to RVT? I don't know. Hopefully he's all right. Only Lonely says $25,000 saved with an engine warranty, $50,000 saved without an engine warranty if you're supporting a family. Listen, I won't disagree with that. I mean, look, more is always better, right? Especially in this game. I mean, just things can happen. I mean, SoCal Canadian, he can tell you he bought a truck, and then some goofy stuff happened with the engine. If he hadn't saved as much as he had saved, then I mean, it's rough. Look, I want to show you guys this really quickly. This was Kyle when he was little bitty. He's all happy. He's all happy and smiling right there. This picture was taken. There was like 1 second of smile. It had been 10 minutes of crying before and 10 minutes crying after, and I don't know what I did to him. It's kind of like trucking. It's just like ugliness, a quick smile, ugliness. No, it's not always that bad. Mark says he doesn't think Walmart's good to drive for. Spectre says, man, we had this discussion the other day. The industry is stressful, but yeah, you guys love what you do, and there's a lot of you guys are just like that, right? We were talking about that. Prolicker says, I think that if more people if there were more people that didn't love this industry or at least respected it, got out, it would make a world of difference. That's interesting. Look, we all know that there's probably a lot of industries, but it seems like this industry is one where it's many love it. I mean, they're so passionate about it, but it also seems like it's a last stop, a last ditch effort for many. And I don't know how many of the people that come to this industry as sort of the last stop or the last ditch effort that fall in love with it. We've had a lot of different kind of personalities or backgrounds, come in and drive for us. And man, it's hard for me if I try to look at the drivers that have come through our doors. It's really hard to put your thumb on any one type. Obviously, there's some similarities. It's really hard. I think it'd be really hard just to put your thumb on, what kind of personality type just loves to drive. Jason says he did drive for Walmart for the benefit, but the benefits suck badly. It's catastrophe type of coverage, not much on well visits. Okay. Mystery says I was referred to your channel by a buddy of mine who owns a chain of florist shops here in New Jersey, Metropolitan Plants and Flower Exchange. I'm a truck driver myself, and he told me to do Think Big. Listen, man, I think there's a lot of guys specifically in my target audience that do exactly that. They think really big, and a lot of these guys execute. There's a whole lot of guys, I think, on this channel that provide a lot of comments that maybe are small right now, but they are very much in the planning process of growing their business, right? Whether that's to stay at one truck or to grow a fleet. And I think there's a couple different channels that provide good information to help guys, and that's fortunate, I think, for YouTube. And as I'll tell you, Mr. East, and I say this about my channel as well as all these other channels, just make sure that you're vetting everything that you hear and make sure that it's applicable to you, right? Because it's really difficult, whether we're talking about what trucks to buy or taxes. There's so many things that are so important to so many drivers, but there's not a one-size-fits-all answer, and so take caution there. You're welcome. Michael says, hey Scott, my DOT is going live February 1st. Thanks for your advice. Awesome. But I can tell you that right now, Michael, I did not tell you to go live in February. I did not tell you that. And so don't put that on me. But I do wish you all the success, because it's you're gonna jump out of there at a rough time. But man, if you can get to April 15th, you'll be doing good. Tomorrow, it's my thoughts. Van spots will drop below $2 for the first time in a couple of years. Some say $1.95, $1.96 as the national average. Tomorrow, when the numbers come out, Jason, I wouldn't be surprised at that at all. I really wouldn't. As I've been dispatching the past, 3 weeks now, whatever it's been. Like I said before, we've been fortunate in the research that we did and where we sent our trucks. It's really, really paid off big for us. I'll also tell you that I made a mistake. We had someone that came off of some personal time up in Michigan, and I had a ton of choices. Excuse me, I did not have a ton of choices when they came out. I had a ton of choices before they went in, didn't have any when they came out, and I sent them down to South Carolina, and I could not tell you the number of phone calls I made in the 2 days as they were heading down there. I put in a countless number of phone calls, came out with absolutely nothing. And what I ended up doing was looking at all the rates and what the rates were looking like. I mean, as far west as Kansas City, and how I would kind of step them over looking for those short, higher paying runs. And what I was seeing is that it just didn't make any sense. And so actually we headed up to DC, and we took a run all the way across the country to get into a really good spot at the time. So my choices were to lose money and to lose time, or to just lose money and get that truck out of there and get him into a really good area. Kristen is sending me pictures of her fajitas. So I'm gonna say that everyone says, so you know, it's a lot about good decisions and bad decisions. And I made a bad one on that one. Somebody asked me the other day, like, man, tell us, everybody's like this, and I'm critical of everybody that talks about all the good stuff. And but yeah, that was a bad decision. But you know, it's one of those things where you just have to look at it, make a decision pretty quickly, and go, man, I can sit here and continue to make more bad decisions. But the most right one was just to get him the heck out of there, take it on the chin, and look, if you're someone that doesn't have some cash in the bank reserves, you might not be able to make that decision. I'll talk about this briefly today or tonight. If you don't have cash in the bank, you quite possibly couldn't make the decision that we made, because we took a big hit. We took probably a 25-cent hit per mile to go from the right coast to the left coast. And there's a lot of guys that couldn't sustain that. But what it did do is it positioned us to really, really well to be in an area where we could turn really good miles on some really good revenues. But if you were struggling, you wouldn't be able to do that. I want to talk about this briefly. I want to talk about cost per mile, but I'm not going to hammer anybody on it. Well, I'm going to hammer this guy on it. So, the last day or two, I've seen a conversation that sort of went like this: "Hey, I want to go to Texas." Okay, and the person said, "Wouldn't recommend that. No bueno, right? Not good." And guy says, "No, I want to go to Texas." Person says, "What's your cost per mile?" Right? So tell me how much we got to get to get you there. Person says, around $2 a mile. Now, for anybody that tracks your cost per mile diligently, you know that anytime you hear something like around $2 a mile, like, you know to the penny what your cost per mile is. Like, it's not around, it's like, if you are one that's diligent, you know to the penny what it is. So automatically the person says, Trevor probably doesn't know the cost per mile. So that was yesterday. Today, conversation goes like this: "Hey, no worries. I booked myself a load from point A to Texas." And the person said, "You did? Well, what kind of rate did you get?" $1.38. $1.38 going into a horrible area for what this particular person hauls. If you're going to take a hit like I did, take a hit so that you're going to end up in a really good area. Don't take again, let's assume that this guy was moderately close to being right to his cost per mile of being around $2. Don't take a 62-cent hit to end up in a bad area where you're not likely to get, your cost coming out. Or for sure, this guy's probably not going to be getting $2.20 a mile coming out. So, my 2 cents, I'm sticking to it. Okay, Michael, I just want that on the record that I did not say start your business on February 1st. I don't know that I don't think, Jason, you're probably in here, SoCal. Is there a worse day to start your business in February 1st, but I'm not hounding. I know that's just kind of how it shakes out, but in all sincerity, good luck. I'm a company driver, says Mark. I would never buy a truck. I'm happy making $75K a year with no headaches. Go home when I want to. I had a driver tell me this here a while back when I was taught. It was one of our guys, and I approached them about potentially us starting up a lease offering. And the driver sort of thought about it for, I don't know, 30 seconds and said, look, my biggest concern every day is whether or not I'm going to make it from the truck to the bathroom. Why do I want to add all that additional stress to my life? And I thought it was funny. That guy is moderately funny sometimes. But a good point, right? I mean, a lot of guys are just comfortable doing that. Some guys want, a different challenge. So I don't blame anybody for those decisions. Yeah, I agree, Michael. Right? If Mark's happy with that, with what he's got going on, that's awesome. That's the whole point. Whether it's trucking or anything else, man, we just want people to be happy in what they're doing. Trucking all day. Say, how's it going? Missed the first part. Oh, it's going good, man. Food Mooch. Listen, we already had that conversation, and my mom threatened Joe Harding. So I'm just going to tell you right now. January 31st is the worst. Oh, okay, Inman, great. Mark says, free work and everybody blames mega carriers. Nah, no doubt. Coach says, terrible decision. I've seen at $1.80 to $1.90 going in with a few sprinkles of $2 here and there. Coming out, you're looking at $1.50 to $1.60. Yeah, I mean, I had a broker that we've taken some loads for. They've been pretty happy with us, and they've been really consistent with the rates. I've asked for a fair rate. They've given me a fair rate. And I mean, they're calling now pretty frequently. Let me know when your trucks are there. I will have a load for you. And what's interesting about this particular individual is he actually has the relationships where he goes to his customers and said, I have a driver, I have a truck that I trust, we need a load. And that's a little unique. Then, not saying that other brokers don't do that, but I find that to be a little bit unique compared to most brokers. This guy has rarely failed to get us a load when we have a truck there, and he's given me the price that we have asked for each time. And I'm sure it's fair to say, hey, I'm sure we're leaving money on the table, but you know what? He's giving me the exact rate that I'm asking for. He does his job, we do our job, he's happy, we're happy, right? So. Joe Harding, I don't know if you caught the first part of this, but I called you out. My mom was right over here, and she basically said, I will wear him out, just like I told you she would say last night. Michael says, added intel, I'm still on contract with the carrier until my truck comes in, putting dollars in the bank. Good for you, man, good for you. Mark says he loves trucking and he's kind of good at it. Clap your hands, right? That's funny, Greg. Greg Harris says, I drove for McLeod. I feel the same way. I'm happy making 85 G's a year, working 4 days a week. Don't have stress or hassle. Listen, Greg, I'm sure there's about every driver in the country would be happy making 85 grand a week driving 4 days, no doubt. No doubt. So, I don't know, I just... I just wish that this, I wish this industry offered, I just wish it offered more and better financial opportunity. I think you have to be, like, for the individuals that I know that are really successful, and by successful, I mean they run a successful business, they're able to grow their business. Greg, I'll use you because I've used you before. Greg is one of the only carriers, independent operators. In fact, let me rephrase that. Greg is the only independent owner-operator that we've ever hired, and we've hired a bunch, that when he came to haul flowers for us, said, no, I'm fine with net 30. I can manage my own cash flow, my own business. And to me, Greg runs a really strong business, and I also know that Greg works really, really hard at making a lot of the right decisions. So I just wish it was, I wish there was more room for guys to make some mistakes because there's just not a lot of room in this space to make um, many bad decisions, right? And when you do make bad decisions, it's tough to dig out of the hole, right? I don't care if it's me sending a truck to South Carolina or making a bad decision on a truck purchase or whatever it may be. Not a lot of room to make bad decisions. Mark says, how long before all drivers make 100 grand a year? Um, I don't know. They say 19 is going to be. Here's what I've been seeing when I look at long-term forecasting. I got a friend of mine that owns works at a lumber company. We'll put it that way. How about that? And what they are projecting for their business is for 2019 to be really flat, but for 2020 to be a significant growth. And so if that's the case, man, we might have to just sort of, make our way through 2019. And if they're right, if they're looking at a lot of the significant spike in the lumber that they're needing to order for some of the housing and things like that, for those of you guys that follow Sonar and look at that kind of data, housing is a key indicator for kind of the growth of the economy as well as trucking, shipping products and that kind of stuff. So I don't know if 19 is going to be flat. I mean, if 19 was going to be kind of like 18 was, I think I would say there'd be a lot more making 100 grand a year by the end of 2019. Hearing that's going to be flat, I don't know. We'll wait and see. Bob says, I've seen shipper cut the brokers out of the equation and deal directly with the carrier. It is how I got 2/3 dedicated weekly run. Yeah, Bob, that's true. We were talking about that earlier today, Bob. What we often hear in this industry is people talking about their triangles, right? Trying to find those good runs. And we've had some direct customers in the past. And what I found is when you just have, and what you said was key, right? Having 2/3 of that triangle. Because what I can tell you is, we had, with our direct customers, we had one leg of that triangle. And man, what we ended up doing was we'd take that great paying run and we'd final out, and then we deadhead a little bit to try to get a run that's going to step us back closer, and then the race is on, right? Now I want to get back to that good paying run, and I want to do it in one more step. A lot of times that step, this particular customer is down in McAllen. A lot of times that step would dump me off in Houston or Laredo or San Antonio, all of which are, I think Laredo's the closest at 150-mile deadhead. And but then you find yourself like, well, man, that run paid so good, I just want to get there. It's such a tough thing. So I think you hit the nail on the head, man. You want to try to make sure that you've got 2 of your 3 legs that pay well. Beast says some swear that they make a lot of money and some don't. I live in the Northeast area, so should I buy my own truck, get my own authority, or just don't take that chance? Man, Beast, again, that's such a. My first, honestly, when I hear those kind of questions, the first thing that runs through my mind is, man, what is your business background, right? And I don't mean this to be disrespectful to anyone. I just think you need to have a really strong business background of understanding profit and loss. I can remember when I was much younger, I thought I had a decent understanding of P&L, but man, when I look back and I know what I know now, kind of a thing. But that's something that's easily learned, right? You guys. Books on tape and that sort of stuff, it's easily learned, but I think it's also easily missed of how important it is. So I would say that's the first question that comes to my mind. If you've got a strong business background, or you can spend some time and get that, and you've got some rates that are solid, then awesome. The only downside about the Northeast is there are a lot of tolls up there that consume a lot of your revenue. But man, give it a go if that's what you want to do. Bob, it's funny you mentioned that. Someone mentioned that to me about a month or so ago. I actually went and researched it, and believe it or not, I sort of felt the same way. That man, as I just sort of give it the eye test, and I go, well, man, that doesn't make sense, right? Is there really going to be growth in an election year? And when I went back and looked at it, I think there's only like 2 presidential elections where the market actually fell. Most of them were improving or increasing. So that was a little surprising to me. I learned something new there. Western attitude, curious to see what's over the mountain, and too stubborn to give up halfway. You know the type, you're the same. Man, there's a lot to be said for that. You know, yeah, you're right, Greg. You're right. Pro Liquor says you got 250 into Austin, or 249, into Austin from just outside St. Louis. Grabbed a nonsense load, Texas to Texas, interstate, to get closer to his $1.73 going out to PA. If you're going in, go in with a plan. Have your buy call before you go. And that's Texas right now. And guys, look, this is not atypical for Texas. It's not atypical for Florida. It's not atypical. Look, Southern California, I mean, when I say Southern California, I mean southern half of California. It's the same way this time of year. Texas is the same way. It's going to be this way for a couple months. Florida's going to be this way. So, yeah, I mean, just carry your back haul with you, you know, for sure. Bob says he's been looking at a new 579 and the business model that its payment schedule presents. Needless to say, I'll wait another 6 to 8 weeks. Man, I would, Bob. I would just sort of sit tight. We talked about that last few videos. You know, with guys continuing to struggle, I think a lot of guys are shocked and dismayed at what the rates are like right now. I think this is catching a lot of the individuals that came and felt like the rates were so good last year that that was their time to transition into being a lease operator or a owner operator. I think a lot of guys are really shocked, and I don't know that a lot of guys have shored up their business or their business plan to sustain this. So, you know, you might find you know, some good trucks and some good trailers at really reasonable prices over the next couple months. Man, you know, trucking all day. I've had people ask that question a couple of times about recommendations on books, and there are some things that my mind just holds on to insanely well for reasons, you know, I can't explain. I've had this conversation before, right? I can tell you that, you know, a gallon of water is 8.34 pounds per gallon. I can tell you that this falls at about 9.81 meters per second squared. I can tell you about the books that I read, the things that resonate with me. To tell you the title of that book or who the author was or authors, I literally have to go and look at my bookshelf to find it. Same thing with movies. Like I can go, I couldn't tell you the names of movies or who the actors or actresses, like those are just things that for whatever reason don't stick in my brain. I have had a lot of head injuries. I do have some memory problems. I know that. But there are plenty of books that I think are really good. You're probably better off to ask some guys in here that would give you some advice, because I couldn't remember the names of them to save my life, literally. Food Mood Straighten Up. Welcome back, by the way. Mark, take care, man. Oh my gosh, Mooch. Oh, I don't know what to say about you guys. So hopefully you guys are finding this. It's gonna be tough for the next few months. We know that. For those of you guys that are just kind of coming into the market last year, just know what it's gonna be like. It's gonna be rough for the next few weeks. Prepare for it, and just make the best decisions that you can, and know what your cost per mile is. That's gonna be a big piece of this. No, Bearden, I didn't even talk about Robert. I didn't talk about him at all, and I won't talk about him. We'll leave it at that. Let's see. Despite the head injuries, you haven't forgotten how to swing a golf club, man. So I kind of have, and what's funny is there's a lot of different feelings. Like if you hand me a golf club, I can still put my hands on it and tell you if there's 2 wraps of tape or 3 wraps of tape. The thing that really annoys me was some guys will put like 2 wraps up top and then 1 wrap down here. That feels horribly awful to me. You know, I used to be able to tell you as soon as I hit the ball. I mean, if it was going to be a yard short kind of thing, but I can't. I don't have that. I don't have those sensations anymore. But I can tell you that it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good anymore. That I can tell you. All right. So Barefoot, good question. I wasn't going to bring this up, but since now that you called me out on it, so I did have some email exchange back with those guys on the software, and it sounds like they feel like they had a lot of good conversations internally today. That I'll say that the sense is, as of tonight, an hour or so ago, the sense is that things are trending well. And like I said, I forwarded a lot of your emails over to these guys to say, look, this is a relatively small YouTube channel. And I certainly don't do what you should do to have consistent growth on YouTube, which is post constantly or consistently for that matter. And so you should heed this, right? There are plenty of individuals that are interested in this. So if you guys are interested in that software, I can tell you kind of in the background what I'm doing, what Will is doing. We've talked to a few other people that are kind of the lab rats on positioning their trucks in their markets using their software and abandoning. And it's not that it was, look, I don't think it was hard for any of us to abandon the way that we've always done it. Maybe just a hint of apprehension, but man, it was quickly overcome by like, screw it, we'll try it. I think that's made it easier because rates are so poor, right? What I'm grateful for is these guys listening to the fact that a lot of us feel that their software is valuable, and while their price points are currently not at all structured for us, they want to pay attention and see what they can do to help us out in what I deem kind of a time of need, because it's a really rough space right now out there in February for rates. And the thing I find most impressive is this company was started almost literally from day one for the sole focus of what they are trying to bring to market in March. And what I'm asking of them is, hey, could I take your attention away from the sole focus of why you guys received all the funding, and could you kind of help us out over here? And they're sort of like, I mean, the fact that they're even looking our way and willing to have some conversation and discuss it internally and take up their mind share, knowing that what they're trying to deliver in the next 6 weeks or so, I honestly, I appreciate them taking the time to hear us out. What comes out of it, we got to stay tuned. What I'll say is, if you haven't sent me an email and you're interested in that software, send me an email. Tell me kind of just a quick sentence or two about your company, how big you guys are, what you run, and that sort of stuff, and I'll send it to them. I will, because I think it's just more fuel for the fire. And so if you're curious, my email's down in the description box. It's thetruckingexec@gmail.com. And for all of you guys that have sent, again, I want to have some follow-up conversation with them, and then we're going to follow back up. We're trying to put together kind of the game plan for how we're going to disseminate this information to all of you guys that are asking for it. So stay tuned, right? Stay tuned. Food Mooch, I don't wear a glove. The last time I don't even wear a glove when it rains. I try not to. I feel like I got like a, I don't know. I feel like I have a clown's glove on. Howard has a new nickname. I did not, Lab Rat. Yeah, Howard's back in Harrisonville now. He's kind of getting his game face on, ready for getting flowers going. We've got a challenge. We have a big challenge ahead of us this year, for sure. For those of you guys that are owner-operators or lease operators that want to come and run some flowers, we can certainly use you guys. So again, shoot me an email at thetruckingexec@gmail.com, and we'll reach back out to you. Typically, probably around that late March, early April time frame for about a month or so. So if you guys want to come, lose some weight. Somebody mentioned last night, I'd asked, I think Kevin Alley was in here and a few others were talking about how much weight they lost running flowers. I think the consensus was like 20 to 40 pounds. And I missed that. I asked the question, but I missed it. So yeah, if you want to get in some shape, lose some lbs, come join us for flower season. It's kind of fun. We got some good guys there. Even the people that we bring in from outside, most of them are pretty good. So that's that. We'll keep this one. It's right at an hour. That's a good time to kill it. As always, if you guys are making miles, stay safe. Pay attention to the weather up north. It looks pretty rough, and pay a lot of attention to the rates. And again, for those of you guys that are interested in that software, if you haven't sent me an email, shoot me an email. I'll forward it over to them. It'll only help our cause. All right, man. Take care, guys.